Why are Jews and Arabs locked in constant conflict? Why do tensions persist, even among Muslim nations themselves? The surprising answer begins with two ancient brothers, Isaac and Ishmael, sons of the same father, Abraham. Isaac became the forefather of the Jewish people, Ishmael, the forefather of the Arab nations. What unfolded between these two sons thousands of years ago uncannily mirrors today's headlines. But the Bible doesn't just tell us how the conflict began. It also reveals how it will end. In this journey, we'll uncover the only moment in Scripture where these two estranged brothers reconcile. And many scholars believe this scene prophetically reveals how today's seemingly endless conflict may finally be resolved. Do you know how the story ends? According to ancient Jewish teaching, there's a principle called Maaseh Avot Siman Lebanim. The actions of the fathers are signs for the children. In other words, the lives of the patriarchs weren't just history. They were prophecy in motion. Early Christianity embraced this same idea under the name typology, an interpretive method where Old Testament stories prefigure future realities. The Apostle Paul used it frequently to show how divine patterns unfold across generations. Using these lenses, scholars have studied the ancient rift between Isaac and Ishmael, and what they've uncovered is astonishing. In this symbolic reading, Sarah and Isaac represent the Jewish people, while Hagar and Ishmael represent the Arab and Muslim world. And when you look at the conflict through this spiritual framework, the pieces begin to fall into place. It all began with a promise. God told Abraham, "I will make you into a great nation, and through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed." But there was a problem. Abraham's wife, Sarai, was barren. In that era, a woman's identity was deeply tied to childbearing. Her infertility wasn't just personal, it was social shame. Later, God would rename her Sarah, meaning princess. But to her, it felt cruel. What kind of princess rules without an heir? Years passed. The promise seemed impossible. At last, Sarah, overwhelmed with despair, offered a desperate solution, one that followed the custom of the day. "The Lord has kept me from bearing children. Go, take my slave." She gave her servant Hagar to Abraham, hoping a child through her might fulfill God's promise. But the moment Hagar became pregnant, everything changed. Sarah, now consumed by jealousy, mistreated her. Humiliated and rejected, Hagar fled into the wilderness. Alone, afraid, and pregnant, Hagar found herself near death. But instead of death, something divine found her. An angel of the Lord appeared. At the darkest hour, she encountered light. The angel gave her a command and a blessing. "Go back and submit to your mistress. I will multiply your descendants beyond number." She named her unborn son Ishmael, meaning God hears, because, as she said, "The Lord has heard my suffering." Then came the prophecy that would echo through time. "He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility toward all his brothers." It's a prophecy that seems to speak directly into today's world, of conflict, of struggle, and of a people who survive, no matter what. But the image of a wild donkey is often misunderstood. In the ancient world, it was a symbol of freedom and fierce independence. This wasn't an insult, it was a prophecy of resilience. Ishmael would grow into a strong people. But their history would also be marked by continual conflict, with others and within. The prophecy proved true, not only in the clashes with Israel, but also in the internal rifts that have shaped the Muslim world. Sunni and Shia, civil wars in Syria, Yemen, and beyond. But the roots of the conflict run deeper still. Years passed. Abraham had only one son, Ishmael. For 13 years he was the apple of his father's eye, the firstborn, the heir. Then came the impossible. At 90 years old, Sarah gave birth to Isaac, a miracle child born by divine intervention. His name, meaning "he laughs," commemorated Sarah's stunned reaction when she overheard the promise from 3 angelic visitors. But suddenly, one day, 3 mysterious visitors appeared at Abraham's tent. As 99-year-old Abraham offered them hospitality, one of them gave him incredible news. "I will surely return to you, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Sarah heard the conversation from inside the tent and laughed. It wasn't a laugh of joy, but of bitter disbelief. She no longer dared to hope. Abraham's reaction was also surprising. When God confirmed that the covenant would come through this new son, his first thought was for Ishmael. Instead of celebrating, he pleaded with God anxiously, "If only Ishmael might live under your blessing." This was the reaction of a heartbroken father who loved his first son and feared the conflict that was coming. Despite everything, God kept his word. Sarah gave birth to a son, and Abraham named him Isaac, which in Hebrew means, "he will laugh." This name would forever remember the laughter of disbelief from his parents. For a time there was joy in the camp, but tension was growing. The conflict erupted during Isaac's weaning celebration. Sarah saw Ishmael mocking his little brother. Here we find an important linguistic detail. The Hebrew word mocking shares the same root as the name Isaac. Ishmael wasn't just playing, he was challenging Isaac's place as heir, as if saying, "I am the firstborn, the true heir." For Sarah, this was the last straw. Her reaction was swift. She demanded Abraham, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." The Bible says, this deeply troubled Abraham because of his love for his son. His heart was broken. God told him to listen to Sarah, but also promised to make Ishmael into a great nation. Though it pained him, Abraham obeyed. The next morning he gave bread and water to Hagar and Ishmael and sent them into the desert. That farewell marked the physical separation that confirmed the beginning of a spiritual divide. A father had to choose between his children. Abraham's anguish in casting out his son Ishmael reflects the historical wounds both peoples carry today. Many Muslim countries and Palestinians, Israel's creation in 1948 and the displacement of their people was a catastrophe. They refer to it as Nakba. This catastrophe is the modern version of Hagar and Ishmael's expulsion into the wilderness. God himself had promised Abraham to bless Ishmael after hearing the patriarch's devotion to him. Suddenly, a baby is born, and overnight, Ishmael's future vanishes. Isaac's birth didn't mean sharing the inheritance. It meant losing everything. This isn't about simple jealousy. For Ishmael, Isaac's existence meant the erasure of his own identity. We see the parallel today. Israel's existence is interpreted as an erasure of the Muslim identity in surrounding countries. Sarah's demand, "That son cannot inherit alongside mine," echoes in today's most radical speeches. For instance, when Iranian leaders call for Israel's destruction, one hadith saying attributed to the Prophet Muhammad says, "The final hour will not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews. Even the trees and rocks will cry out, 'Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him.'" This hadith is referenced in the Hamas Charter, and some imams claim that Jews are even planting boxthorn trees, mentioned in the hadith, as hiding places when that time comes. Despite the painful separation between Isaac, representing Israel, and Ishmael, representing the Arab peoples, God had a plan for both, but the plans were different. To understand why Ishmael's blessing differs from Isaac's, one must first understand the most important aspect of this story: the covenant with God. Only Isaac received the covenant. A covenant is more profound than just a promise. It is a sacred and special relationship between God and a chosen people. God promised Abraham a unique relationship, and through Abraham, blessings that would flow to all his descendants. But why Isaac and not Ishmael, the firstborn? The answer: a divine choice. Ishmael was born from human effort, Isaac from a miracle, God's direct intervention in two elderly and barren bodies. The spiritual covenant is tied to the miracle, not the human plan. Ishmael receives a blessing of worldly greatness. Isaac receives the covenant to be part of God's sacred history. The idea of being a covenant people, a chosen people, has been the cornerstone of Jewish identity throughout history. It has inspired pride, preserved their survival, and at the same time provoked conflict in a world that often resists such a claim. Yet the Bible reveals a critical truth. Even though Ishmael is not the son of the covenant, he is not beyond God's care. Before the expulsion, when Abraham pleads with God for his firstborn son, God responds not with rejection, but with compassion and a promise. "As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I will bless him and make him fruitful and multiply him exceedingly." This promise is dramatically fulfilled in the wilderness. After Hagar and young Ishmael are cast out, abandoned in the desert and near death, an angel of God intervenes. He not only reveals a well of water to save their lives, but also repeats the divine promise. "Do not be afraid, for God has heard the voice of the boy. I will make him into a great nation." This moment is crucial. While Isaac is promised a spiritual covenant, Ishmael is promised earthly greatness, descendants, power, and land. Ishmael becomes the father of 12 princes, paralleling the 12 sons of Jacob, who would form the 12 tribes of Israel. Many scholars and historians see the fulfillment of this promise in the rise of the Arab peoples. Across centuries, they have established mighty empires, produced vast scholarship and culture, and wielded global influence. But here is where the stories begin to diverge dramatically. The Quran and the Torah offer conflicting versions of Abraham's life and legacy. Struggle between Isaac and Ishmael, originally a family drama, becomes a civilizational question. Who tells God's true story? In Islam, there's a bold theological claim that earlier scriptures, including the Torah, were altered by men over time. That's why the Quran presents itself as the final, uncorrupted revelation, restoring what was lost or distorted. This shift dramatically reshapes one of the Bible's most pivotal moments, the sacrifice of Abraham's son. In the Bible, Abraham is asked by God to sacrifice Isaac, a test of faith that seals the covenant. But in Islamic tradition, the son to be sacrificed is not Isaac, but Ishmael. Why does this matter? Because to be the child of the sacrifice is to be the spiritual heir, the bearer of the covenant. By placing Ishmael in this role, Islam rewrites the center of the story. It makes Ishmael, and by extension his descendants, the rightful spiritual successors. It's not a minor revision, it's a reversal of the covenant, claim to divine inheritance. Interestingly, the Quran never names the son in the sacrifice story, but Islamic scholars have long taught that it was Ishmael. This creates a profound divergence. Judaism and Christianity continue the lineage through Isaac, while Islam considers Abraham and Ishmael the founding figures of its most sacred site, Mecca. This conflict of narratives is not just theological. It has shaped real-world history and even fueled violence. Nowhere is this more evident than in Jerusalem. The Temple Mount, the most sacred site in Judaism, is also home to two of the most important Islamic structures, the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It is quite literally one sacred history built upon another, and who controls it becomes a symbol of which story is true. Beneath the golden dome of the Rock lies a stone that makes this conflict even more profound, the foundation stone. In Jewish tradition, this stone is the spiritual center of the universe, the place where Adam was created, where Abraham prepared to sacrifice Isaac, and where the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple once stood. But in Islamic tradition, this very same rock is the site from which the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven during his night journey. Two sacred stories, one physical location, a collision of revelations. Another iconic feature of Jerusalem, the Western Wall, also carries layered meaning. To Jews, it is the last remnant of the Temple Mount complex, the closest point they can approach to pray near the ancient sanctuary. It is a place of deep mourning, longing, and hope. To Muslims, the same structure is called the Buraq Wall, where Muhammad is said to have tied his winged steed Al-Buraq before ascending to heaven. Once again, one site but two narratives. This is why control of Jerusalem remains one of the most fiercely contested issues in modern geopolitics. It's not just a struggle over land, it's a struggle over memory, meaning, and divine legitimacy. The real question isn't only who owns the land, but whose story is true? Isaac's or Ishmael's? And yet the Bible leaves us with a surprising image of hope. When Abraham dies, after a lifetime of faith and turmoil, the text says something subtle, but monumental. And his sons, Isaac and Ishmael, buried him. After years of exile and silence, these two brothers, rivals in destiny, reunite to bury their father. They do not argue, they do not compete, they simply stand together as sons. A detail treasured in Jewish tradition is the order of names, Isaac and Ishmael. The fact that Ishmael, the elder, allows Isaac, the heir, to be listed first is seen as an act of humility and a gesture of reconciliation. It becomes a prophecy that one day the descendants of Ishmael would accept the role of Isaac, and peace would be possible. This act is not political. It's personal, sacred, and symbolic. Despite all the pain and division, the Bible shows that God never abandoned Ishmael. Both brothers remain sons of Abraham, and both were blessed, though in different ways. In modern times, this hope has begun to echo again. In recent years, several Arab nations, including the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, made a historic decision. They signed peace agreements and normalized diplomatic ties with Israel. The name of these treaties? The Abraham Accords. For the first time in decades, modern diplomacy turned not to division, but to common origin. They invoked Abraham, the father of both peoples, as a symbol of shared identity. But this is not the only quiet movement of reconciliation. In the mystical branches of both religions, Jewish Kabbalah and Islamic Sufism, something even deeper has taken place. Their spiritual masters didn't focus on proving whose religion was true. Instead, they sought to dissolve the ego and unite with the divine. Both traditions describe the soul's journey as an ascent through spiritual worlds, drawn by divine light, returning to its source. Both speak of burning love for God, a love that transcends doctrine and identity. In these sacred paths, labels like Jewish or Muslim fade, and only the divine mystery remains. And so, while politics continues to divide, mystics have met at Abraham's tomb, in silence, in prayer, in shared pursuit of the one God. They embody what the world struggles to grasp, that beneath the conflict there is kinship, that beyond the covenant there is compassion, and that the path to peace may lie, not in conquest, but in remembering who we are, sons of the same Father.